it. So we record these programs and they're posted up on the OregonCarvers.com website afterwards. So for future programs, or even this one, if you want to watch it, you can always go watch it, almost always go watch it. Takes a couple days to digitize it and put it up and get through the Zoom and Google process. Tonight's program is on sharpening. The July program is a show and tell. So we're collecting examples from members and non-members for examples current or past that are something you'd like to show. No object too small, no object too big, too poor, too finished. Jim Hall, who's been carving and turning for as long as I can remember, is allowed us to photograph a lot of his work. So he will be showing a selection of that. And so if you have work of your own that you would like to contribute, drop me an email to lpwade@gmail.com and we'll get you on the list. We'd like to get photographs ahead of time to make that go smoothly. This will be our 12th consecutive monthly Zoom program. And the question is always, when will we be doing things face to face? And the answer is August 14th. And this will be our first experiment for doing an outdoor social/light demonstration event in Portland. And I don't know how many will show up. Somewhere between 10 and 25 would be my guess. It'll be in my backyard. It's spacious. We got places to spread out, and there'll be 3 demos. So we're going to put our toe in the water, and hopefully we'll be able to do some more face-to-face things, as well as online Zoom-related things as we go forward into the fall. So Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll go from here.
Okay. For those who don't know me, I'm Roger Crooks. I'm Larry's wingman on the board. And so tonight, I think we have a very interesting topic. Sharpening is, there's all of you are carving, and there's no right answer for how to sharpen. There's a lot of wrong ways to sharpen, and we hope if you have any bad habits, we can help you get rid of those. Larry mentioned the picnic that we're having on the 14th of August. The machines that you're going to see, especially the power sharpening machines that you're going to see tonight, will be there for you to try out. And along with, I'm sure Terry will have a stropping kit there. So it's a good way to experience some of the things you're going to see here tonight. For those of you who are members of the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers, we have all those machines in the shop there. And being a member, you have free use of the bench room where the sharpening systems are. So you're welcome to come and try them out. If you want someone to be there that's knowledgeable, can help, just let us know, and we'll try to arrange a time where we can both all meet at the shop there and run you through the machines. So tonight, our presentation is divided into 3 sections. We're going to talk about power sharpening, talk about stone sharpening, and we're going to talk about stropping. Between each session, we're going to open it up for questions for the board, the panel that we have, and Chuck Reinhardt's going to be on the panel, and Tom Rich, and there's 2 others that I don't think they're on yet, Heidi and Ruth, who are, if they join, they'll share some of their experiences in learning how to sharpen with all of us. So the videos will take about 60 minutes. We'll try to have 10 to 15 minutes between them for Q&A. So hopefully we'll be done between an hour and a half and get everyone either to dinner or to bed. As Larry said, we're recording this for your later review. So the first session we're going to talk about is power sharpening. And Larry has put together a PowerPoint to talk about power sharpening and the resources that we have at the shop. So I'm going to call that up here. Where to go? Share my screen.
My name is Larry Wade. I'm going to make some introductory remarks that describe.
So does everyone see that?
I'm not an expert.
I think everyone's muted, but hopefully everyone can hear that. Here we go.
I'm not an expert.
Whoops.
I'm not an expert, just a student, still awed by the variety of approaches that actually work for others. I mostly use the grinder sharpening method taught to me by Jeff Harness, with origins from Bill Drake of Great Knives near Seattle. Many others filled in the gaps. It's a humbling journey, and I'm still on it. As our experienced instructor Chuck Reinhardt said, after 20 years, I'm getting pretty good at sharpening. I've been at it for 5. I see 6 alternatives for sharpening. Buy disposable tools. Pay someone to sharpen. Marry a sharpener. Buy good tools so you sharpen less. Learn how to sharpen, or some combination. So far, my wife isn't inclined. Seeing is a big part of sharpening, which means good eyes, lighting, glasses, or magnifiers. The 10 power devices shown at the top are my go-to aids, and I'm experimenting with a 50 power iPhone camera microscope shown at the bottom. My favorite is the 10 power handheld lighted jeweler scope, $15 at Amazon, that Diana Larrabee discovered. Lee Valley is a great source for products and information. Try to find the catalog shown or go to leevalley.com and search for sharpen-net. Another good online resource is sharpeningsupplies.com and look for their resources section. I especially like the Veritas steel honing plate from Lee Valley because it only costs $25, is guaranteed flat, and will stay that way. Separate plates are dedicated to use with typically 2 different diamond pastes. This is an economical approach to get flat stones that can be recharged. Normalizing abrasives to microns keeps the same. The chart shown here focuses on the 2 sizes that Mary May uses. Her diamond stones translate to 15 and 1 micron grit sizes, which is equivalent to 800 and 2000 grit sandpaper. Later, you will see the sandpaper on the Burke system translates to very coarse 160 and 60 microns. The ubiquitous green honing compound is a half micron, making it very fine. Using microns, we have hope for understanding where other products fit, like Waterstones, Arkansas stones, and Shafton ceramics. A small team designed and produced a batch of strops that we loan or sell to new students. They are rough side up and have variable curves on the edges for inside doubles. We typically use a paste called Autosol metal polish because it is easier to apply than the wax-based green compound. We have leftover leather that is available for free to members who want to make their own strop. Some suggestions are to practice sharpening with the $12 Harbor Freight carving set. Watch Chris Pye's sharpening DVD that's in the Guild Library. Join Chris Pye's paid website for more videos of his on sharpening. Watch the complete Mary May's free sharpening videos. Look at chippingaway.com for some interesting alternatives. And use Klingspor yellow sandpaper to reduce heat. Okay, now let's get into motorized sharpening. These are the 2 systems owned by the Guild and available for members to use in the bench room and during in-person classes. The one on the left is called the Burke Tote, and the two on the right are part of the grinder-based system. Chuck grew up on the Burke and prefers it, while I grew up on the grinder, which has a separate belt and disc sander to do blade shaping. John Burke was a well-known carver from the Midwest who passed away a decade ago. His company still sells 3 variations of the motorized systems he designed. This smaller tote version was designed for portability while being fully functional. It uses fairly standard components, and many carvers have created their own variations. The half-speed motor and pulley spin the MDF wheels at 650 RPM. The sandpaper and leather are glued on with rubber or contact cement. The stamped metal frame is decently rigid, and the whole unit can be carried with one hand. The cotton wheel on the far left is for polishing. This dual axle system has the same 4 wheels, except 8 inches instead of 6, with a second axle supporting smaller tools and different profiles. It costs $550, while a tote is $365, with one variation between. The sandpaper grits used are up to the owner, but typically are 220 and 100. The leather can use either green compound or Autosol's metal polish. Chuck never uses the polishing wheel because he finds it too rigid, too prone to rounding over the edge. The leather and 220 grit wheels are the most used. The disc sander is used for squaring an edge and is seldom used. A tool's blade will typically rest on a spacer block so the handle can clear the table. When the shank is squared to the disc, a few light touches will be enough to joint the edge. From there, the tool is moved to the belt. The belt table is removed to provide clearance for the handle, and a shop-made handrest is added for stability. A good light shining down from the top is essential to see the moment of approaching sharpness. Skilled sharpeners like Jeff know when to stop at that moment, but us mere mortals learn to stay just shy and to finish with stones. Belt direction doesn't matter, but it runs down. The Rikon grinder shown is variable speed, but the belt/disc sander at the guild is not. Practically, the coarse 120 grit sandpaper we use does fast work to minimize heat and reduce chances of losing the temper. We use special Klingspor sandpaper belts, which have some lubricant to also reduce heat. A fine grit would take longer to remove metal, and the added dwell time could more easily overheat the tool. In either case, we have quenching water handy. The grinder system itself is used the vast majority of time. The versions we assembled are housed in plywood carryalls, but these are optional. The motors are typically running at half speed or 1725 RPM, still fast, but less risky than running at the full 3450 speed. The motor direction is reversed by simply unbolting it from the base and rotating it. Lights are crucial and need to shine down on the main honing wheel, as shown on the right. The operator's eyes are looking straight down on the edge being sharpened, looking for the moment of truth, watching for the burr to form, and looking for the telltale dull edge to disappear. This slide shows the details. There are 3 critical parts. The honing wheel shown on the right is made by razor sharp from compressed paper, but it could be shop made with MDF. It uses green honing compound, lightly coated on the surface. The 2 edges are slightly knocked off. The floppy wheel on the left is totally flexible, has little stitching, and is loaded with white honing compound. As the motor spins, the cotton fabric strengthens, but conforms to the tool profile, whether inside or outside. To avoid rounding over an edge, the tool is held at the tangent near the top for safety, as the wheel turns away from the operator. The third important component is the simple wooden handrest block shown near the lower right. This provides control, accuracy, and safety. To test for sharpness, use the end grain of a piece of soft wood. Test the left, middle, and right portions of wide tools. Chest sharpening class of 6 hours, split between hand and power sharpening. Takes time and a lot of practice to get decent results. It is important to understand and practice hand sharpening before moving to power. Motors are time savers, but they also allow you to make fast mistakes. Be particularly careful with tools that have low thermal mass, V-tools and spoon gouges. Heat is the enemy, so have quenching water at hand. In the end, only you can decide which approach to take. I wish my wife would bail me out and do my sharpening, but I probably have to stick with more practice.
Okay, one short video here of the machine in action. Let me get there. Okay, here we go. So there it is. See how easy it is? So before we move on to the next section on stone sharpening, we'll open it up for questions. You can unmute yourself or put them in chat, and we'll see if we can get some answers for you. Well,
I had to record that a couple of weeks ago because I just had knee surgery and didn't know if I was going to be on narcotics or not and be able to talk coherently tonight. The system shown, the Burke system, is indeed the Guild's Burke system, and that resides in the annex for those of you that are in the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers. But both machine systems should be available to either the carving SIG or to the Oregon carvers as we do classes. The other grinder-based and Rikon standard system was what my own in the shop. The Guild owns similar ones.
I was
So
looking
does
at
it
the,
make a, go ahead.
Go ahead, Harvey.
Yep. Does it make a difference what kind of power sharpening system you use if you're using flex cut tools as opposed to the more traditional heavy metal tools?
I can only tell you, Harvey, what Jeff said. He keeps saying that the flex cut palm tools, if that's what you're talking about, tend to be spring steel. So it's a lot thinner, and they're only tempered to about 3/32 of an inch back. So as you grind more down, you're going to end up out of the tempered range and get into a disposable category. I can't say that that's true. That's what I believe because he told me, and I believe him because he's got a lot of experience for that. He Jeff was teaching 7 classes a week in his studio in Hillsboro, and the vast majority of tools were flex cut and palm tools, and they were all honed on that system.
Which system?
The grinder based system.
Thank you.
Jeff, everybody's got opinions, and I'll just read it. But interestingly, Jeff is biased. I love Jeff. He's wonderful experience. He grew up on the brick system, and he got tired of the messiness of changing the sandpaper and with contact cement. But mostly he didn't like the inability to look straight down on the edge to see what I call the moment of truth, as you're approaching that. So he said he had a lot better visibility on the grinder based system. So he had experience with both. But everybody's got their preference, and everybody can master whichever they choose, and they'd be really good at it.
Larry,
Thank you.
Larry, this is Arvin.
Yeah.
In addition to your chart on stones, DMT makes an extra fine stone, and it's about 8,000 grit. It isn't listed in the regular things on like Amazon. You have to kind of drill down to find it, but it's actually sold by Amazon, and it's very good on carving tools.
Yeah, thank you. I do own that too. I own one of everything. I wish I didn't own one of everything, but I am aware of that. Thank you very much. The other thing about the grit chart is that the grit chart is really, really very large and very wide and long. The Lee Valley website has a huge matrix, and there are other variations that kind of show illustrations of all of the other ones. My main goal of showing that subset of the chart was to get the point across that there is such a thing, and that there are lots and lots of alternatives. The Lee Valley one is the most comprehensive one I've found.
Larry, I was watching the machines. The second one appeared to be turning towards you. Is that correct?
No, it's turning away from you for sure.
Okay, well, that's what I would think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you don't want them running towards you.
No. Okay.
Bad news. Yeah, bad news. Yeah, there's usually most grinders that I've seen have 2 bolts on the bottom. It's really simple to unbolt them.
Yes.
Leave the wiring all alone, switch them around, and put the bolts back, and you're done.
Okay.
Let me ask another question for discussion. To me, the scariest part about the powder machine is the angle you approach it when you're doing your gouge. What's people's experience in how to gauge hitting that wheel at the right angle? Anybody care to jump in there?
Well, I guess I could talk from my experience and the way I sharpen. I don't really focus on, I guess, on a specific angle. The thing that I get concerned about, and I like to have it get sort of rounded a little bit at that heel. If you sharpen a flat angle, you end up with a sort of ridge at the back edge of that. And that sort of interferes with me when I'm, riding the bevel around a curve or something. And I tend to just kind of grind that off. And all those things I do really by hand and just sort of by feel. Introduce another issue. I studied carving or learned to carve from an English carver, and he emphasized, an inside bevel as well as an outside bevel, primarily for strength. But you only do that on the fairly flat tools. You get past, say, a 4 or 5, usually it's not worth trying to do, because the main reason for doing that is so you can turn the tool over and use it upside down. And if you got it flat, if you don't have an inside bevel, there's just no way you can make a light cut. because there's no room for your handle. You know, the handle's going to be down against the work. So I think that that is an area we haven't dealt with. And when you get into that, first of all, how do you put it on there? That needs to be done before you do the outside bevel. I guess when you go back, Larry, to what you said, Chris Pye has a real good discussion of that in his work. And I think he helped me understand that more than I had just from, because when I dealt with my instructor, we really didn't get a lot of instruction. You just sort of learned by doing, and eventually you got there. But I don't know whether that helps or not, but I just want to bring that up. I don't know whether the rest of you deal with an inside bevel concern or you don't think about it.
Yeah, Chuck, I'd like to reinforce the Chris Pye thing. He really has the most extensive information, factual and demonstration of anything I've ever seen. Rob Kossman is quite well known. He produced a sharpening DVD and video featuring Chris Pye maybe 15 years ago, be my guess. It's out of print and you can't buy it, but you can usually find it sometimes on Rob Kossman's website and download it via Vimeo site for about $20. The Guild of Oregon Woodworkers Library has a copy. It's really good. But the other way is to sign up for Chris Pye's website for 1 month for $15 and go watch his sharpening stuff. He's got all that information by hand and by power. And you get to see what his powered system, his custom-made, homebrewed system looks like. And it's really quite amazing. But he's a great resource.
So there's I talk about this a little bit in a little stropping demonstration we have later on, but this thing I don't talk about. One way, if you care about, if you do want to know what the bevel is exactly, I mean, on a knife, it's what, 10 to 12%, I mean, 10 to 12 degrees, something like that. But if you really want to find out what it is, you hold the blade flat on the sharpening surface, whether it's, well, as flat as you can on a wheel, kind of tangential to the wheel. And then slowly by hand, turn the wheel back and you'll see that it doesn't grab, it doesn't hold. If you get my hands up here, if you tilt the knife up slowly, right? You'll reach a point where you turn the wheel back into it that it'll grab. Back off a teeny bit on that angle from that point, and you do have a perfect bevel for that knife, whether it's 10, 11, 12, or 13 degrees, you've got the right angle. That's one way to do it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Roger, the classical answer is use a Sharpie, mark the back of it, and put it down carefully to see where the black Sharpie ink is coming off, and then adjust, use that as a mechanism for feedback. I made a passing comment to go buy a Harbor Freight practice set. They have a six tool medium size handle thing, and just grind the heck out of it. You'll learn enough by, if you will, a disposable set of metal to try to find that, and you'll eventually intuitively you'll get there. But it does take feedback and practice.
Any other questions before we move on to Mary May?
I just want to make one point, going back to what you were saying, Terry, when you talk about that point where it grabs. To me, there's a point at which you have to raise the handle of the tool until you get it to bite the wood, right? I mean, that kind of, what I'm finding more and more is that the narrower that angle, in other words, the lower that is, the sharper I can get. And also the less effort I have to put in if I'm using a mallet, because I'm not driving the thing into the wood. I'm actually putting the impact from the mallet driving the blade through, or the edge through. But that's an important thing. As you bring the tool to the wood, you got to work for that angle, find that angle, and then you can do it. And what I find, I'm working with students, it's a very subtle thing to catch that. If you want to make a real fine continuous cut, it is a very, very fine hand-eye coordinating kind of thing that you just have to develop by doing. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to get there. And I think that's another key. So as you're checking your sharpening, Larry talks, he uses end grain, but I found that what works for me on particular gouges, I get a nice block of soft white pine. And if I can take that and just pair cross grain without it tearing out, then I know I'm sharp. White pine is a nice wood to work on, but you've got to really be sharp to work it, to work well. And if you just make that cross grain shaving cut, if it does it nice and clean, it comes away shiny, you're sharp. If it's still tearing, you need to go back and hone some more.
You just described part of the little video that I made.
Oh, is that right?
That's how I test a lot of my tools. Yes, sir.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Okay, our next section is from Mary May, who's given us permission to play this for the group. And let me just get that up.
Roger's bringing up an edited version, so the about half the length of the 2 free videos that she has on her website, and she was very gracious to give us permission to edit it to our heart's content.
Why did I just lose it here? I was just playing it a second ago.
These are
Okay. Sorry about that. Let me just, I don't know where it went. Too many windows open. Okay. Played this before we got going here. Where'd it go? Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to show you some of the materials I use for sharpening. Here's a series of stones that I use, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of those. These are slip stones. These are shaped stones that go on the inside of the gouge. And this and this are 2 different types of leather strops, and I'll be showing you how to use those also. Those are the final steps in sharpening. And I've also got a Sharpie, which I will be drawing on the back side of the tool so I can see where it actually hits the stone. Very, very handy technique. And also I've got some water for the lubricating the diamond stones that I'll be using for the demonstration. Now you want to stand comfortably and sort of loosen up a little bit because you might be here for a while. And you want to stand maybe about 12 inches away from the bench. Stand with your feet about maybe 18 inches apart, just so you can get a good balance and so you can stand comfortably for a while. And now I want to take and just put a little bit of water on the stone. Now, the manufacturers of the diamond stones quite often recommend either using water or water with a little bit of detergent. And I have heard that the cleaning detergent Simple Green is used by a lot of woodworkers for that purpose, simply because there's not a lot of chemicals in that soap. And I've just heard that people use it a lot. Now, I just simply use water. But make sure that if you're just using water, or if you're using water with soap, make sure that you wipe it off when you're finished, because it's very possible that just having water on this for a long periods of time, it will end up rusting it. So that's something you want to just be careful of. You don't have to worry about that with oil stones, but definitely with water stones, you need to make sure that they're nice and dry when you're finished. Now, before I put this on the stone, I'm going to take a Sharpie, and I'm just going to take along the back side. And this is going to give me an idea of where or whether I'm hitting this stone correctly in the right position. Okay, so wherever it wears away, that is where it's hitting the stone. And I want that to pretty much be from the base all the way to the tip. So if, for instance, it only sort of grinds away right at the tip, then I've got it raised up too high and I need to lower it down a little bit. If it just hits this base, then I need to raise it up. So, that's where you determine whether you have it positioned correctly. So just take this and rock it until you can feel a flat. Now, there are going to be times when you have tools that maybe need a lot of repair, you're not going to have a flat bevel. So that sort of rocking and trying to feel the flat is not going to happen. So you want to just take and try to use that, and then you can kind of estimate. Then wrap your hand around the handle of the tool. And then I'm going to lock my elbow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move my body left to right along that stone. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm really trying to keep as consistent of a movement as possible as I'm moving along. If I'm just going to take my arms like that and rotate like so, it's going to end up being this very sort of flexible movement. There's not going to be a lot of locked in movement. And there's a real possibility of, in that process of just going like that, it's one side or other is going to be pressing too hard. Something uneven is most likely going to be happening. So that's why I try to just come across, and as I move across the stone, the only part that is going to be moving is my wrist, or the only part that's going to be twisting. Elbow locked, and then just move side to side. Okay, and in that position, there's not enough movement to really let things go lopsided. And that's what we're looking for. Now, I just want to look at the back side of this and see what happened just in those first few strokes. You can see it was actually a little bit more on the base here, but you can also see that it was actually worn away in the center, right along there. So I did hit the center, but it looks like I need to be raising it up just slightly, because I want this whole flat side, whole back bevel from there all the way to the tip to be one flat surface. Okay, and as I do this, I'm rotating the tool along the whole length of that blade. All right, look back at it, and all right, it's looking pretty good. And just need to keep on going a little bit. It's certainly hitting that whole back side. There may be a little bit of a hollow ground right there. Sometimes when you buy tools, they do actually manufacture it with a slight hollow ground. So there are occasions when you have the center part here that it never hits the stone. That's not a big deal as long as you get a sharp tool. Okay, so I continue to rotate it across the stone. And now if I turn it too much, if I twist it too much, more than the actual curve of the gouge, what's going to happen is these corners are going to be rounded over. And if you look at the fishtail gouges, they sort of splay out and get wider at the ends. The nice thing about fishtails is having those nice little sharp corners. Well, if you knock off or soften those corners, the whole benefit of having a fishtail gouge is sort of lost. So we really want to make sure that as you're doing this, you're just going along the edge and then coming back and continuing. Now, there are times when you may want to take and round over those corners. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that with fishtails, but with the straighter gouges. Sometimes not having those sharp corners are a benefit in certain types of carving, such as when you're carving, let's say, for example, beads upside down, and you're making these cuts like that. If you've got it straight across, those corners, as it sort of goes over that shape, are going to hit the background first, and then the center is going to hit later. So what's going to happen is you're going to have these things dig into the corner. If you sort of round off those corners, everything will sort of hit that background at the same point. So there are times when you may want to customize it that way, but in general, you want it to pretty much, as you're looking at it like this, the blade goes straight across. Now also, if you don't turn it enough, if you don't rotate it enough and complete that whole edge, what's going to happen is you're not going to hit the outside corners. Those outside corners will be sticking high then. You'll actually look at it like this and it will scoop down and then raise up at the corners. So you don't want that either. Okay, and then you do this, and I would say on average, depending on how much metal you need to remove, on average, you would probably be sharpening anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if you have more metal to remove. But the diamond stones are pretty aggressive. It's been a long time since I've spent more than a half an hour on a gouge, but sometimes if it just starts doing some strange things, unexpected things, or if it's been placed on the stone incorrectly and then you have to fix it. Basically, you should be able to get through the sharpening process, within a half an hour. And so just, take that time, relax, put the music on, and then just swing to the music. Okay, now I fast forwarded a little bit and I got to the point where I just keep going in this direction until I get a little wire edge along the entire inside edge of that. And you can test that by just taking your fingernail and just dragging up in that direction, not that direction, drag away from the blade, just to sort of feel and see if you can feel this little click of metal along that edge. Okay, and also if you just be very careful. At this point, the tool is getting very sharp. If you don't have fingernails, just take your finger very gently and go along the edge. Again, in that direction, not in reverse, but you can sometimes feel it just along that edge, little tiny, just sort of edge that you can feel. All right, and then what I'm going to do is take my slip stones and we're going to get rid of that wire edge. Now, there's a couple different shapes I have here. This is one that's got a curve and a corner on it. I could probably use that one. There's one that I made and just shaped it myself, a piece of broken Arkansas stone, and I shaped it. So let's just go ahead and use this one. Now, normally, these are Arkansas stones. Normally, I would use oil and with lubricating these, but since I'm using water stones, probably should keep it basically the same product. So I'm going to take this, just see if we can get that lined up there. And I want to go right along the inside edge, just sort of walk it along, make sure it hits the edge. Now, if you notice the angle that I have the stone, it's a slight angle, so it's creating a little bit of an inside bevel. And then if you wanted to, you could actually angle it a little bit more to create more of a bevel on the inside. Now, there are a lot of people who, as soon as they buy tools, as soon as they get them, they create a very dramatic inside bevel. And there are uses for that. It certainly helps in some cases, certain types of carving. But generally, I just take a slight angle and angle it in there. And what this is doing right now is taking that little wire edge and it's flipping it to the back side. Now, once it's on the back side, then I put it back on the stone. And just very lightly, I'm not really sharpening at this point, I'm simply just dealing with that little wire edge. Right, then I go back to the inside and go back and forth. Now I can do this back and forth, inside, outside, probably, it really depends on how large that little wire edge is, that maybe 5, 10, 15 times going back and forth until it gets so thin that that wire edge just falls off. And at that point, you know that you've got that as sharp as you can get it, except for one final step. Now, this next step is used as the final step in the sharpening process, but I also use it as I'm carving. If I feel like the tool is getting a little bit dull, just, maybe seeing a little bit of scratch marks on the wood from the tool sort of cutting through, then I would use this process of the leather strop. And I just want to show you what I've done here. These are several different radiuses of wood that I made, and this is actually a V chisel. So if you look at it from the angle, it's a sharp V. And what you can also do is take different radius dowels and cut them in half and use that process also, just so you have a variety of different size curvatures, just to fit the different curved gouges that you have. Then what I did is I took a piece of leather and glued that onto the surface of all of these. This does not have leather. If sometimes with the V chisel, because it's such a sharp corner, the leather is almost too thick, so it doesn't allow it to reach into the corners. But these are the ones that we're really concentrating on now with the curved gouges, just a variety of radiuses. And then what I have is some sharpening compound or buffing compound, just rubbed onto the surface. There's so much out there. A lot of times it's just this paste that you can put on there. But whatever you end up using for any kind of stropping wheel or polishing wheel, anything like that, you can pretty much use for this. It really is just an addition to the leather, and it just ends up polishing up that gouge and polishing up that blade to just that mirror edge. Okay, so this part here is for the inside of the gouges. Let me just show you how I use that, and just press down and pull back. Do not go in that direction because you're going to do two things. You're going to dull your chisel, and you're also going to gouge up your nice piece of leather. So drag back only, and I can see from an angle, I'm not lifting it too high. If it's lifted too high like that, it's actually going to dull the tool. And I'm just going to drag this back. It's amazing what this does. It definitely will just polish up that tool. And I think I probably use this, if I'm using a tool maybe, for an hour straight, then I just put it onto the leather, and it just, it brings it back. Now, unless you have chips out of the actual blade, this isn't going to cure that. You have to take it back onto the stone then. But just for that refining of that edge. Now, let me show you this other one. This is for doing the back side, and this is just a piece of scrap leather. And the compound that I have on this, it's silicon carbide powder. And silicon carbide powder is what jewelers use for polishing stones. Again, you can use the same material, same polishing compound that I used on the other. It really doesn't matter, just something that will polish. But the process that I used with this was I took a little bit of oil, and of course this is when I was working with my Greek teacher, Konstantinos Papadakis, and he had me put a little bit of oil on the back, extra virgin olive oil, let it set overnight so it sort of soaks in, and then turn over and then put the powder on here. The oil sort of holds it together. Now this is about 20 years old, so or more actually, probably more like 23 or 24 years old. And and it's still held together, and the compound on it is still looking very, very solid. So in order to use this, I just take this and drag it back. Right, just do like that on that side so you can see dragging it back. Again, you don't want to go forward with it. You want to just drag back. So just a long sweeping movement. Now you can also use the reverse side of an old leather belt. That helps. It's always nice to be able to actually have things in your home that you can actually make into tools. So that's another technique. And if you do not have these shapes, what you can do is actually roll this, and say if you need to go the inside, just be very careful because your fingers are so close to that blade. So just another technique of how to do that. Now, once you're finishing with the stropping, then you want to test your gouge just to make sure that it's really that sort of final polished edge. And the best way to do that is just test it in wood. You want to take a cut and go straight across the grain, and that will end up giving you an idea. If the wood starts to sort of shred or rip, then you know that there might just be a little bit of that little wire edge still left on. So you have to go back and do a little bit more of the back and forth, inside, outside with the slipstone, and try to remove whatever is left. So that could be an issue. Maybe you hadn't gotten to the point where you actually got the wire edge along the edge. So maybe you have to bring it to the stone again and start that again. So there's a lot of things that could happen. But if you take each step along the way, make sure you've actually completed that step, and then go on to the next one. You should, by the end of this process, have a razor sharp gouge. And you will notice the difference. If you've had an opportunity to carve with a very dull gouge and then carve with a sharp one, oh, you will see an amazing difference. And it's just going to be so much more pleasurable to carve, and it will just sing through the wood. All right, you do that until you get a little wire edge along the inside of both of the sides. Dave Riley, who is the one who makes my steel and brass mallets for me, he actually designed and carved this. It's a large prototype of a V-chisel, so you can kind of get an idea of what's actually happening. All right, so this side is basically what happens after you take a flat side and a flat side. And what happens, this is where the issue comes in, is you have a flat side, and which creates a sharp corner on the outside. And if you look closely at your V-chisel, I say most of the time, there's always those exceptions, but most of the time, the inside of the V-chisel has got a slight radius, right? That's just like that. It actually clears the wood a little bit better. All right, so as a result of that, you've got a nice curve on the inside, you've got a sharp point on the outside, and as a result, it actually creates a sharp point sticking out there, which really makes it hard to push that tool through the wood. So the trick then is to take this outside corner and round that off, basically sharpening it like it's a tiny little gouge, round this part off so that it matches the inside radius. And so let me just show you how to do that. So in order to do this, you can actually look sideways at it and make sure that it hits this whole flat area from the base to the tip. All right, it's very easy to get a little impatient and lift it up a little too high just to deal with the corner, but you don't want to do that because then it's going to end up rounding that outside corner. It'll create a curve right here, and you want to have that as flat as possible. All right, so no taking shortcuts. So try to get that whole rounded area, that whole outside corner rounded. And see what I'm doing? I'm just taking and just very lightly going and sharpening it as if it was a curved gouge. Now I could end up actually repositioning this as if it was a full curved gouge and sharpen it like that. Again, referring back to the other lesson on sharpening the curved gouge. Okay, and I wanted to show you other ways of dealing with the back side there. Now here's two V-chisels that are really quite different. This has got a much longer bevel on the corner, and that was actually ground down, and just so it doesn't get in the way. And so if you look at the from the side, this is a lot clearer or cleaner, and then this corner can kind of get in the way. So ideally, this should probably be ground off just a little bit so you can, it's a much smoother cut. So those are two completely different ways of dealing with that sharp outside corner. But if you look at it, that's actually a rounded curve on both of these, right? So that matches the inside curve. So that if you look at the inside of this, the outside matches the inside, and then eventually that little point that is sticking out will eventually go away and will just slowly disappear as long as you start to round over that side and match the outside radius with the inside radius. And that's what you get as a result, right? So the outside matches the inside, and then you get a nice, even, smooth surface along that edge, and hopefully very, very sharp.
Okay. So there you see Mary May's way of sharpening. Anybody have any comments or questions on that? I'll tell you, the one comment she had that was a little bit frightening to me was taking 15 to 20 to 30 minutes on a gouge. That takes a lot of patience. Especially if you have half a dozen that you want to get sharp. So.
She has two standalone videos. The one that we excerpted was entirely on the V tool, and the V tool is the big bugaboo for most of us. So she was just kind of touching the highlights of that. Terry, I'm sure will talk about the stropping thing. The thing that frightened me about it was her black stropping piece of leather. Not all silicon carbide grits come in the same grit, and she didn't say what she used 20 years ago when Papadopoulos gave her the magic sauce. So you could end up putting really coarse silicon carbide grit sprayed on that thing and ruin it. So be careful if that's what you do.
Anybody else?
So I certainly agree with her about stropping often, but you always have to eventually go back to something else to
I just wanted to show you
bring that
some
burr up. And I use an India stone. And that takes, when I do that, I only do it about once every 10 or 15 times. I strop 10 or 15 times and then take it to the stone once. All right. But I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes on a knife, and probably 15 to 30 minutes on a gouge if I have to take it back to a stone. So yeah, that takes a while, but that's a manual method. I found when you guys introduced me to power sharpening, that is a much quicker way to do the same job.
For sure.
So anyway, those are some comments. Stone sharpening takes a while, but you can do a really, really good job. You have total control. And
I think there's a definite difference between creating the edge you want, and then the maintenance of that once you have it. And I think what she's talking about there is the beginning. The first time you pick up that gouge to commission it, I guess, or whatever. Chris Pye had a word for that. But that process can take some time. But once that's done, really the maintenance from then on is really pretty short. And Roger, you don't have to spend 30 minutes just because you're a little bit dull. Yeah. I enjoy watching her doing that process by hand. When I work with I grew up, really found that this is the Burke system, Larry. I think that's what we call it, right? The one we have, the wheel, the one I have,
Yes,
the Burke system,
Yeah.
right? When I do that, I work on top of the wheel and I work at right angles to the wheel rather than working, straight on, because up there, I can actually see what I'm doing when I'm rotating. And it's quite a marked change. And the other thing I would suggest or would mention is there's no way I'd ever take a bench tool to that system. A bench tool, I like to have it really flat and at a given angle and what have you. And I just, my carving tools don't work that way. They're, they have their own edge, and you get there by just working with it. A good point.
I will make one other comment that she reinforces in her classes, and that is, she picked basically a number 3 tool at about a 15 millimeter sweep. That's a pretty standard shallow sweep, wide gouge. If you get a number 11, which has got very steep sides on it, your body is really moving a lot in order to be consistent across those, to get back to both points. It's very, very hard to deal with that. And if you think about a 15 millimeter version of the number 11 compared to, let's say, a 3 millimeter version of the number 11, which is very tiny and very narrow, you end up with a whole different set of body mechanics in order to kind of deal with that. And of course, she doesn't do that. But
one other comment I wanted to pick up on, she spent a lot of time on the wire edge. And, Ian taught me a little trick that I use. In fact, I don't really dwell on it. Again, a nice piece of soft pine. And once you feel that wire edge, just simply drag the edge through that pine. And for me, it takes it right off. Now, I don't use a loop to inspect what I'm doing, but I go after that and hone. And I end up with a very sharp edge. And I don't spend a lot of time going back and forth on either side to remove that wire edge. I don't know if anybody else has an experience with that or not, but that's my approach to getting rid of the wire edge before I hone.
I've got a question as a very, very beginner wood carver. And is it all right to ask it now, Roger, or should I wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I can sharpen my chisels, I can sharpen my hand planes because I've got a piece of glass and I've got sandpaper. Can I use the same system on these tools, or do I have to go buy stones like she was just using to hand sharpen them with stones? Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I would have some thoughts. You're using sandpaper as a grit, and
Right.
you get the sandpaper. The main thing, you've got a nice flat surface when you have a glass under it. That's fine for flying tools. There's no reason her flat diamond stone is the same thing, really, isn't it? It's just diamond adhesive. Diamond grit. You can do the same thing. You just have to get you're going to need a couple of different levels of grit, and then you're going to need a piece of leather, I think, to do the honing, and some kind of a compound there. But certainly, you can do the grinding on that system. You must use pretty fine grit paper now on your final polishing movement when you're doing your bench tool.
I'm going up to about 2,000. I should probably change it to go up to a higher grit, but I have not done that move yet.
I guess my answer to that, or my feel for that, is you achieve that instead of with a grit, you achieve it by using the leather and doing the honing. So if you're up to 2,000, I don't think you'd have to go any further than that. I think she has that one stone. Roger, you had the grit on that. I'm sorry, Larry, you had the grit on the one she had. You pointed that out, and I particularly bought that diamond stone, and it's what?
I think 8,000, wasn't it?
1,000 on one side and maybe something else on the other side. And then I went to a finer one for honing, but that works fine. There's 2 grits solve my problem. Then I go to leather. If I'm doing anything.
In my experience, this is where the religion comes in about sharpening. You know, for those of us that do woodworking, you know, we would take a tabletop and we'll sand it, and we're chastised to go through the grits. You know, we do 100 grits, then 120, then 150, then 180, and 220, and we stop. We don't skip a grit. And you know, you're going one direction, then you go the other direction, so you can see the grooves, and then take those off and incrementally. Well, going, you know, these systems that Mary showed, there's an intermediate step that's possible in terms of stones, but she goes right from the 1200 to the high to the fine grit, and skips the intermediate ones. And there's lots of writing, lots of talks about whether that's good or bad. The same thing, Chuck, about your point about paying attention to the burr and taking the time to, you know, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We just get on with it and knock the thing off. And at some point, it's both, it's theology and it's practical, right? You have to kind of make a choice of just getting on with it. In the little 1-minute video I did on using the grinder base thing, you'll notice at the end, I turned the tool over and I gently touch the edges of the inside tool. That is essentially knocking the burr off, exactly the same way that Chuck did. And I'm sure there are purists and theorists that will say, don't do that, you know, just go back and forth, because the theory is you're creating a serrated edge as opposed to a smooth edge.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I support what you're saying, Larry, because to me, if it works, it works. You know, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this if I can help it. And that little technique just cut down a lot of time. And the point is, I get an edge that works. So obviously, I'm doing something right. You know.
Yeah.
That's a good lead into our last session here with Terry, who's going to talk about stropping. And there we go.
Which represent the most common profiles used. These are roughing knife.
Let me go back to the beginning here.
Hi, my name is Terry Burnside. I have been carving wood and sharpening tools for over 25 years. Today, we'll talk about what I have learned about stropping over this time. We will strop 3 different tools, which represent the most common profiles used. These are a roughing knife, a gouge, and a V-tool. This will provide examples of sharpening that will cover the vast majority of the carver's kit. What is stropping? Stropping is a part of the sharpening process in which an edge is polished by dragging it across a strip of material, usually leather. The leather strip is glued to a flat or square piece of wood. It may be bare or loaded with very fine abrasive. All sharpening techniques remove some amount of metal from the tool. The amount removed by stropping is very small indeed. This is normally the last step in the sharpening process, and it's what we use to make the tool, now this is a scientific term, scary sharp. Why do we strop? Stropping is normally performed for one of the following reasons. The first reason is to polish a tool that has been honed. Honing is used to restore a proper V profile to an edge that has been dulled and lost its necessary shape. Honing is an aggressive sharpening technique that normally leaves rough lines, burrs, and edges in the blade. The stropping step will remove these, refining the edge and creating a razor-sharp tool. The second reason for stropping is to restore a razor edge to a tool that has been used but not blunted.
Carving will slowly blunt any edge, but if a tool is dropped frequently during carving, the edge can be restored to the point of making it effective without honing. Does my stropping technique differ from a traditional sharpening method? Well, yes, it does. It's a hybrid. I will point this out as I go through the demonstration. Let's go to the demo and see how stropping works. Right. I will show you several strops that I've used and do use. And then one of these we'll use later on in the demonstration. This is a paddle strop. It has leather on two sides. On one side, I've used an abrasive, loaded that with an abrasive. It is an intermediate abrasive, yellow in color. The other side is unloaded. I also use that same abrasive on a small contoured strop. And I'm showing you these because I carry these with me in my traveling kit. They're small strops that I can, because of their size, I can take them almost anywhere, and they're very effective. So this contoured strop is cut, just a block of wood to fit different profiles of blades, as you can see. Again, it's my traveling kit. The abrasive that I use actually came with this strop. It's from FlexCut, and these abrasives last quite a long time. You'll notice it's in a block shape, a little bar kind of, and that is typical. I'm going to show you 3 strops that I use to as a set in a process, stropping process. You'll notice this one is darker, kind of a medium color, and then this is just plain leather. This is loaded with an aggressive, coarse kind of material, abrasive. This is a moderate sort of stropping material, abrasive, and this is unloaded altogether. Similar to that yellow bar that I showed you, here are the bars that I use to load these strops initially, black. For this one, again, the most aggressive, coarse, yes, kind of stropping material. This is white. I use these to help sharpen blades that might be a little tough to get to with a single flat strop. One that I'm going to show today because it kind of gives you a good compromise between those contoured strops, a simple paddle strop, and allows you to do quite a bit of sharpening with a single tool. It's a 4-sided strop, block of wood, square cut with a handle. The first side, leather, is loaded with this black material, abrasive. The second side, it looks awful dark, but it's an old strop. That kind of happens with age. Is loaded with this white abrasive that is much finer than that black material. The third side is just leather and is used for cleaning and polishing that blade once you've finished with the abrasives. And then the fourth side is not leather, it's nylon, and is loaded with a green compound that is a very fine polishing process. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on too, as I strop. Okay, this is the strop that I'll use in the demonstrations today. By the way, I didn't go out and try to make this up and try to find these materials myself. I bought that with that strop that I showed you last, the four-sided strop, and with some instructions to show you where and how to load the abrasive, and then what sequence to strop in. So we will take a look at what we need to do to sharpen a rough-out knife using this four-sided strop. Let's talk first just a little bit about several basic rules for stropping. In this case, we're going to be using a knife, but these rules generally apply to any tool that you're stropping. So we want to drag the knife across the surface of the strop. In some sharpening activity, you may actually push the knife across a stone, but that's not the case with stropping. So we want to drag the knife across the strop. How do we determine what angle the knife should be? Well, for a knife, the bevel of a knife is generally 10 to 12 degrees, let's say. There's several ways to determine what that position of that blade should be, how it should be held. One is to estimate the number of degrees that the blade is from the strop by starting with it perpendicular to the strop, that's 90 degrees, having that's 45 degrees, half that again, that's 22 degrees, half that again, that's 11 degrees. So I guess you could say it's pretty darn flat. What do we need to know next? Well, when you're stropping a knife, particularly because it's a dual bevel, you want to strop both sides. You want to take care as you're doing this not to roll the knife over when you go back in the opposite direction. As you make the end of the stroke, pull the knife, lift the knife up from the surface, and to make sure that you don't accidentally roll that blade over, the safest thing to do is just to turn it in the opposite direction and go back again. Lift, turn, lift, turn, like that. Okay, that's the second. The third thing is pressure. You might feel that as you're dragging this across, the harder you press down, the sharper your blade will be. That's not the case with this kind of sharpening tool because it's leather. Leather gives, it sinks in, and if you press too hard, if you muscle it, you may just take the end, the edge that you're putting on there right off again as you press it down into the leather. So there we go. I typically, if a knife is, if I'm just resharpening while I'm carving, I typically only do 6 to 8 strokes on each side. If you find that's not sufficient, when you test it at the end of the sharpening process, you can just do it again. But that normally is fine for a resharpening. This idea of resharpening is very important while you're carving. If you will stop after you've used the blade for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how heavily you're using one single tool, and strop it, you'll find that you don't have to do any extraordinary sharpening measures for quite a while. Try to remember that and follow that. It'll save you time, and and save your save wear on your tools too. Okay, so I do that on that side. I remove whatever fine particles of steel and grit might be on the blade with an old rag. Go to the next side, do the same thing. 7, 8, 6, 7, 8 strokes. This is the second side is a little lighter abrasive, more of a polishing compound. And finally, I move the third side and do it again. This side is just leather, it's unloaded. This particular leather is old and this one has been used quite a bit, so it's pretty dark. And now, when I'm done, I'll lift it up, and sometimes, usually, I'll test my tools to make sure they're sharp enough. And I do that simply by shaving my hands or my wrist hair and see what that does. And that removed the hair, so I figure he must be okay. In this part of the demonstration, I'll talk about and show you a little bit about sharpening a gouge. Rather than going through the entire demonstration like I did with the knife, we'll just show the differences and talk about them. Much of the technique is the same. For instance, going from one side to another, the rough side, the smoother side, and then the leather side is still the same number of strokes, but there are differences, and these are those differences. First of all, the gouge is a single bevel tool, the bevel being on the rounded side, so we don't have a second edge to drag the tool down the strap on. The second thing is the gouge is curved. And because of that, our technique in sharpening will be a little bit differently. We still start on the same rougher, more coarse side of the strop and drag the tool down. But as we do it, we rock the tool so that we can get the full surface of the edge going down one side, again, because it's a single bevel tool. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not, it might be kind of hard. My hands may be obscuring this, but the tool is held at a much steeper angle, about twice what the blade is at least, because the bevel on a gouge is much more pronounced than that on a knife. So we drag down. As we drag, we rock. We only drag one side. Now we're finished with this one, and we're not going to sharpen the other side because it's not beveled. But what we might want to do is make sure that there are no micro burrs still on that side. And we'll do that by lightly dragging the back side of the tool on the edge of the strop. And we go ahead and go through our process of sharpening. It's 2 and 3. And when we're done, we test the blades. Now we could actually shave our arms to test the sharpness, or shave our hands, but I usually use a piece of wood. And just any old rough piece of wood. In fact, a rough piece of wood is probably better than a smooth one. And what you're trying to do is just make sure that that blade is not dragging across the wood and ripping the fibers. In this case, it looked good, so we're done. All right, this part of the demonstration, we'll show the third tool that we said we were going to, that I said I was going to demonstrate stropping, and that's the V tool. The V tool is a single beveled tool, kind of like the gouge. And rather than going through the entire stropping demonstration as I did with the knife. I will just show you again the differences in stropping the V-tool. We have two outside edges or beveled edges on the V-tool, and we want to drag the tool down the strop, lift at the end of each stroke, try to keep an even stroke. And like the gouge too, this has a steeper bevel. So the angle that we hold the gouge at will be a little higher. And we'll sharpen both those sides about, 6 to 8 times on each side, like we did the other tools. Now, another difference between the V tool and the gouge is this heel or spine on the back of the tool. This needs to be handled also. And to do that, we'll run that keel down this V-shaped notch in the strop several times. And what we're trying to do is get a little bit of a burr, clean up the outside edge, way down in the point or the crotch of the V. When we're finished with that, similar to the gouge, we're going to try to remove that little micro burr from the inside. We're not sharpening the inside of the blade. We're just trying to gently remove that burr. And then we'll repeat that sharpening process on sides 2 and 3, and we'll be done. Now, when we finish that, we again want to test the V-tool, and we're not going to try to shave our arms with this. That takes much more coordination and daring do than I really want to try to. So we'll try this on my old trusty board again. I'll do kind of a shallow cut, see if we can get a nice little curl up, and I did that, and a little bit deeper cut, and make sure the blade is sharp as it goes up higher, and it is. I get no drag marks. It's a smooth cut. So we're done with that one also. During the demonstration, I had mentioned a couple of things that I haven't addressed yet, so I'll take the time now to do that. The first of those was how I can use this 4-sided strop to avoid honing every time I sharpen my tool. That's fairly simple. The explanation and the secret sauce, if you will, is in this first side. I use a relatively coarse abrasive on this first side, and because of that, when I run my blades across this surface, I create a burr that is very much like the burr you would get if you performed conventional honing, but it's on my strop, and I do it much less, and it creates a very, very small bead and very, very fine scratches and imperfections in the blade. Okay, that is how I can avoid honing quite so much, and why I strop as much as I do. The second topic was, what do we use this fourth side, I'll find it in a minute, here we go, this fourth side of the strop for? The answer to that is pretty simple. When I do honing, traditional, conventional honing with a stone or a wheel, I have a blade that is scratched and deformed enough that you can actually see it without a microscope. You can see it with a magnifying glass, or sometimes even your eyes. So in that case, when I hone, I go through the same process I would as if I was stropping, and then as a last step, I run the blade across this nylon surface with a very fine green polish on it. And that takes out any of the visible scratches, ridges, and burrs you might have in that blade. And that's what the fourth side of that strop is meant to do. Thank you for listening, and happy carving.
Good job here, Terry. So we have any questions for Terry? Well, I've got one to start. So the green, the white, the black compounds, are there names for those, or is all green the same, all yellow's the same, all white's the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. The answer to that is no. They're not, but generally speaking, for instance, green is usually chromium oxide. That's the material. It might be a little coarser, a little finer, but that's generally what the material is. Now, maybe it's not all the time, but that's kind of what my research said. White is aluminum oxide. And again, the grit could be a little different, but you'll find that typically that any black material, I shouldn't say this. Most black material, it will be coarser than white material, which is coarser than green material. So I'd be really careful about that, though. If you go out and shop for abrasives, I got all of those abrasives over 20 years ago, and I'm still using the same stuff. And I know the black is much coarser than the white, which is much coarser than the green.
Where's yellow fit in?
Oh, yellow's an oddball. Flex cut threw that in. I just got a flex cut, one of those contoured form kind of things, and it's kind of an intermediate thing. It's not a polish. It is more of an abrasive, but it's a very fine abrasive. So I still, with that flex cut, with that little flex cut contoured thing, I still like to use a bare leather kind of strop to clean that up a little bit, polish it when I finish using that. But I'll put that in my bag with small tools when I travel, and I can use that contoured thing and that paddle strop that I have, and keep the blades fairly sharp. Yeah, I would hate to say exactly what grit any of that stuff is. Well, first of all, that exact number is lost in history. I'm not even sure that specific strop is made anymore. There are quite a few strops that are made now that are square, that have 4 sides. And I've noticed most of them come with a set of abrasive compounds, 2 or 3, that you can put on the strops. I haven't seen one exactly like the one I use in quite a while. I bought that from Smoky Mountain Wood Carvers or something, or Mountain Wood Carvers decades ago. I like that particular one because it's got little grooves in the side that are perfect for a V tool. And those corners are really good on that block strop, are really good for getting the opposite side of the bevel and taking off those teeny tiny burrs. And I use an India stone when I really have to bring up a burr. And I still do, even though occasionally I'll go use my my power tools. I'm still a little afraid of them. I did burn up a tool the first time I tried. It got really blue, and I'm kind of assuming that's bad. So, yeah, that was a long answer.
Yeah, Roger, I'd encourage people to look at sharpeningsupplies.com. They've got quite a bit of material on the various compounds for dealing with those kinds of issues. I haven't done it myself, but recommendation was look at jeweler supply companies the jewelers are dealing with metal polishing, and there's all kinds of different colors that they use. I suspect there's an overlap between what they have and what we have. It gets mind numbing.
So apparently we picked the metal polish for the strops that we make in the shop.
Because why? Because Gig Lewis loved it about 10 years ago, and because when Chuck showed up, he loved it. I've fallen in love with it because it's easy to apply. I would call it a grease-based ointment as opposed to a wax base, which is what the green is. But the vast majority of carvers will use the green because it's cheap, it's ubiquitous, it's easy to find. They're both inexpensive. The green, I think, is finer grit than the Autosol. I called the Lee Valley up to ask them what is the grit size of the Autosol. They said the manufacturer will not tell us. They said we think it's between 1 and 3 micron, where the green is 0.5. So good. The question always is, when is good enough good enough, and what is the convenience factor?
So if you don't want to buy an expensive strop, or you want to if you want to build some bench strops, some big ones, it's really an easy thing to do if you have some scrap plywood laying around and leather. Typically you want to use a rough side if the leather has the rough side, a little contact cement, and your compound of choice. I think I experimented during my first 5 years of carving, maybe, with different things, but I'm an habitual person. So if I find, hopefully my habits are good. Not always are my habits good, but usually I hope. Anyway, if I find something that works, that's what I use. So after about 5 years of experimenting, I hit on this, and I've been using the technique that I use for the following 20-something years.
So do you think in general, when you go and buy a new tool, can you go right to stropping?
I do, yeah. I'll test them first, but I've found just about any tool. Some tool manufacturers will sell you give you a great deal on a tool, but it's not really finished, and they tell you that. And all you have to do is pay 20% more, and they'll put the bevel and the edge on it. I bought a few of those just to see how I could do with them. So those certainly, I do some heavy work on those, but usually tools need a little bit of polishing. I've found when I get them. I will anyway, just to see how it works, see how it feels. That the business about finding the right angle in the bevel after you've worked with these tools for a few hundred hours, you kind of know what angle you need for a particular tool. So
So if I'm just starting out, would you suggest using the felt, the Sharpie on a strop?
Maybe. If you want to, okay, so if you want to get the feel for it and you really want to prove to yourself that the angle that you've chosen is the correct angle, that's probably a good way to do it. I've never done that, to tell you the truth. I've used the trick where you flatten the blade and raise it up just a little bit until it catches. And that's always worked fairly well for me when I couldn't see the bevel and I didn't feel comfortable with the angle I was holding the tool. You will find though that, it's not perfectly consistent. You won't measure the same number of degrees on all gouges, but most gouges are between, say, 20 and 25 degrees, the bevel. Most knives are between 10 and 12 degrees. So there is a distinct difference in how you hold those two tools, the angle you hold them at.
That's kind of my approach. Frankly, every tool I pick up when I go to carve, I search for that angle where it cuts, and I don't really care if it's 1 or 2 degrees different than something else. My guess is every tool in my box probably is at a slightly different angle. the point is, with your hands and your eye, you pick the angle at which it cuts, and that's where you use it. So the big thing though is having the edge sharp so that it actually cuts cleanly. So I guess I don't see getting hung up on precise angles or anything of that nature. It's good. I think the thing you find is as you lower the angle, get down between 20 and say around, instead of 20 and 25, you get down to 18. The lower the angle, the sharper the tool gets and the easier it is to go through wood. The problem you get into is, suppose you're carving something in white oak now. If you had that tool and applied it there, you'd probably break the edge off.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of play with the kind of tools you're working with, or the kind of wood you're going to be carving in. The softer the wood, the narrower the angle. I would, it'd be fun to try to carve some balsa wood sometime. You really have to have a razor blade angle. But I remember trying to do a carving for an outside flower box. And I had to use, I think it was white cedar. And I absolutely could not get a blade sharp enough to carve it. I ended up having to route the daggone pattern in. So, you get into that kind of situation. I don't know. Again, as I say, when you pick the tool up and apply it to the wood, you just automatically find the angle at which it cuts the way you want it to cut. And I don't really care too much unless I'm in a really dense wood, hardwood, whether I have to, modify that angle.
Yeah. Good. We have a couple of volunteers that offered to be on the panel to talk about their experience in sharpening. I think Ruth and Tom are here. Tom, you want to give us some comments?
Sure. I took a few pictures. Can you share my screen? You allow me to share my screen, I should say?
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Okay. Hang on a sec.
Looks like our auction.
Yeah, it was. My first introduction to sharpening was a class very early on my beginning at the Guild. And it was primarily for flat things like plane irons and chisels. And Ray taught the class. And we had this little honing guide at the Guild, and he recommended these DMT stones, and they worked really good for a while I was just doing some chisel work and getting my planes tuned up, a few other odds and ends, draw knife and some other things. So, but when it came to doing carving, when I got interested in carving, they weren't very good at all. So I have to move some people over here so I can, there we go. So then I was a coordinator for Jeff's carving class. Help me with his last name.
Jeff Zenz.
Oh, Jeff Zenz.
Yeah. And he had worked for again, I lost the name. The fellow in Eastside Portland, really excellent woodworker, and his job was doing sharpening. And so he had us all get a granite stone and water stones and a granite flat plate. And he taught us to use not the Veritas honing guide, but a more expensive honing guide. This one isn't the more expensive one, but a honing guide like this. And so that really was a big mess and tedious. And you had to, prepare your stones a couple hours before you're going to sharpen, and then you had to get them out of the water, otherwise they'll deteriorate. And so that was kind of short-lived. Excellent process, but it was not workable in a little shop like mine. And then I started carving, and this is a stone like Mary May, and strop, and a little bit of that white paste that Larry's talking about. That's at the Amsol metal paste. And this works really good for me for doing chisels. And I just strop on a leather strop. I have a strop on a board and also just a plain piece of leather. And that worked really great. And I got all excited after taking a class about motorized grinding. And I do a little bit of turning, and I thought, oh, this would be really great. So I made this stand, turned the motor around, and I made a wheel on the left side over here that is leather, and so I could do stropping. And I bought an angle guide for doing knives and chisels and that sort of thing. And I found that really didn't work very well. It was really very cumbersome, even though it's a very nice design and so on, very adjustable. It really didn't give me the right angle, because it was how far you pushed the knife into the stone or into the wheel. This kind of a setup is nice because you can pull these arms out for different lengths of tool, and they're interchangeable. So if you want the grinder or the you can put this tool on this side, and the other, you can switch them back and forth. But I have abandoned the motor altogether because I've ruined too many blades, and I have to take them out to my sharpening guru, Tom Fiff, out in Oregon City, to fix what I had ruined so that I can get back to doing some work. And so now I'm back to this, using just a diamond plate that's long enough that I can do what Mary May does, her little sideways dance. And I've made a couple of tools that I learned about on a YouTube from Ben Orford, who's an English guy, and he does spoons and other kinds of carving. He sells hook knives, and these little sticks are just 5/16 thick, 1 inch wide, 8 inches long sticks. And this one, the black one, just has sandpaper with some contact glue on the back of the sandpaper, and wrap it around the stick. And that makes a really nice hand tool for sharpening. And this is a piece of leather around a similar kind of stick. And the edges are rounded so that I can run those edges in my hook knife and sharpen the internal curvature of the hook knife as well as the external curvature of the hook knife. And it works really great with these straight blade knives and even curved blade knives. I do use the Sharpie. I think that's an excellent way for me to kind of start out and make sure that I'm at the right angle, and then I could just continue and maintain the proper angle for the knife blade. And I use Paul Sellers recommends using just some window cleaner to lubricate instead of water or simple green. So I went up to dollar store and got a lifetime source of lubricating water and just glass cleaner. So that's about it. Oh, this is one other thing that I was going to experiment with for a particular blade that I wanted. I saw some videos on just a 1 inch by 30 belt sanders, and there's a kit you can buy that has everything from a 150 grit down to a 1200 grit sandpaper belt. And then it also has a leather belt that you can use for power stropping. And I did use the power stropping, and that seemed to be fairly good. It's a nice piece of leather, and it is, you can turn it outside, you know, so if the soft side is on the outside, and charge it up. And I just used the white bar to charge up the belt with honing compound, and it really works quickly and works nicely.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
So that's all.
Ruth,
All right. I'm going to try to, I don't have a lot to add, but I will kind of highlight what I've learned. And we'll see if I can show my bench top here. Let's see, I can't see what I'm doing. Let's see.
Tom, turn your share off.
Share stop. There we go.
Let's see. So, okay, if I talk, am I going to come up and see? Let's see, maybe I can. Roger, can you highlight my screen for me?
Yeah.
I can see what I'm, see if I can get down to my bench here. Does that look horrible? Uh-oh. I'm sure we're, okay, hang on. I better just, I'll just hold things up. Okay. I started out doing chisels and plane irons before I got to carving tools. And so I've kind of gone through different things. One of the things I found really helpful with a lot of different things to sharpen is a record. I've got this little notebook, and everything I sharpen, I put in there. The battery's got to turn my power on for my computer. And it's come in really handy. I write down, I make notes of what grits I use and how I sharpen each tool. And then when it becomes dull, I go back and go, well, how did I do it last time? And how am I going to do it this time? I'm going to do the same thing. Am I going to increase the angle, lower the angle because it's not staying sharp long enough or something like that? And since there's so many different tools to sharpen, and I can't remember what I did 10 minutes ago, I think it's a really helpful tool. So I've used that a lot. I started out with Norton water stones, and pretty soon realized that the lower grits like 220 and 1000 were too soft to work with gouges. Since the gouges are touching the stone at a very small spot, they're really making grooves pretty quickly, and you're having to flatten them all the time. And so then I went to the diamond stones like Mary May demonstrated, and I try to do what she does and go back and forth. There's been some discussion about how to find the angle of to sharpen the bevel. And I do what Chris Pye recommends, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And that is find the angle that I want to carve at. If this is something I'm carving, then when I hold it in my hand with my carving grip and I've got my palm on, and how high do I want to lift it? What's the angle? That's exactly the carving angle that I want to be at. In my holding, that's how I want to sharpen it. So when it comes to sharpening, I kind of put my hand down on the table and I simulate that angle. How am I holding the tool? Well, that's what I'm going to sharpen it at, the angle that I want to hold the tool. And then I try to train my elbows and my body to hold the tool at that angle when I'm doing the sharpening. And I sharpen at the height of my bench where my elbows and hands are down pretty low and there's not a lot of strain in my shoulders, and I can scoot away and try to sharpen. Personally, I found getting to the corners and not rounding over the corners I haven't figured it out yet. I either don't get the corners sharp or I've rounded the corners and I don't have my corners left. That's still a challenge for me. What I'm using now to sharpen is the DMT stones. I use the 220, the extra coarse, when I've got a nick or I really need to reshape a tool. Some of the used tools I've gotten maybe had a pretty bellied shape and I needed to take out that belly to get a more of a straight bevel. And there's a lot to grind off and I'm afraid of the power tools. So I can grind pretty quickly on the extra coarse DMT stone. I also use that stone to flatten as my lapping stone to flatten my water stones. And that works great. Then I go to the coarse stone, take those scratches out and go to the coarse and then to the fine. The fine is 600 is what they say, kind of a 600 mesh. Then there's an extra fine stone, which is 1200. Well, my extra fine stone, when I bought them from DMT, and this is a heads up for people that purchase stuff, added scratches. It was had some heavier, some coarser grit particles on it that I still haven't worked off the surface. Some people talk about conditioning your stones. Personally, I think that's not a good product, something that you can't use, but you have to do a whole bunch of, I don't know what on to make it do what it's supposed to do. So I messed up in that I didn't right away realize that and return it to the manufacturer. So my extra fine stone is not in my sharpening sequence. I'm trying to break it in, doing odd jobs. And maybe someday it will be broken in and that coarser grit will be gone and not causing me problems anymore. So I just use the DMT stones up to the fine stone, which they say is 600 mesh, like 600 sandpaper, I guess. Then I go to 1000 water stone. And that is still a Norton. Sometimes I go to the 1000. Sometimes I hop right up to the 4000, but I'm still using what's left of my combination Norton water stone with the 220, which is only about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch left, and the 1000 stone, which is a little bit firmer, and that's got about almost a 1/4 inch left. And that will probably pretty soon wear out, and I will buy a stone that I don't have to soak all the time. My Norton water stones stay in a little tub all the time in water, and they can do that. They're supposed to do that. And then when I need them, I pull them out and use them. My next stones will be a splash and go, where you can just pull the stone out and put water on it and use it right away. Then after the 1000, I go to my combination stone, 4000, 8000 water stone by Norton. And these water stones are much harder than the 220 and the 1000. And they hold up pretty well, even for carving gouges. They really don't, they get a little bit gouged, the 4000 does, but the 8000 doesn't really. I can polish my carving gouges on here pretty well. But I found that I can get an even better polish on the Sharpening glass stones. So it's 8000, I think it'd be the same thing, but it actually puts a significantly better polish than my 8000 Norton. So that's the last of my polishing stone sequence. And then I will strop. And here's my homemade strop from a leftover little leather fanny pack. And I've got the suede side and I've put green compound in it, but I haven't really renewed it. I've just kept it. And I like it a lot because I set it on the bench and I can just sort of put my fingers around it and I always stroke away. And this keeps my fingers out of the way and I'm always stroking away. I put a little curvature on the edges so I can get low sweep gouges. I can pull them down here and do the inside bevel. And I've got a little bit of some different things going on the side that I can get a little bit of the smaller, 11-3 or 9-3 and do a little inside polishing. I've also got, when Chuck taught us, he gave us a bunch of, his class, we got a bunch of dowels, and I've put the auto sol on those and use those for polishing, taking the burrs off. I've also put inside bevels on a lot of my gouges, and I've used some slipstones for that. I've got it's some kind of an Arkansas stone. I'm not very familiar with those, so I can't remember which one it is, but it's about 1,000 grit. And what I have had a hard time doing what Mary May did and sort of keeping an angle as I'm moving my hand like this. So what I'll do is I've got little leather pads on my machinist vise. I'll kind of set this down into my vise on my bench, and then it's stationary, and then I can move the gouge over it. And I just find that I'm much more coordinating and using a gouge with two hands, just like you're carving, and I can kind of be much more deliberate and tuned in to a specific motion and getting an inside bevel.
Oh, you already did.
So I'll start out with the 1,000, then I
We should sit down here in a minute.
picked up some 4,000 and 8,000. I don't know that they're working too well. I'm not sure I'm really getting a very good polish on the inside bevels. Then I'll finish up polishing with the dowels and stropping with like Mary said, maybe just bending a piece of leather, a little more supple one to do the inside. Only one more thing to add, I think, is I enjoy using, instead of a spray to wet things down, which tends to get everything in the neighborhood wet, including a lot of metal items that might rust that I have to then wipe off. I just use a mustard container and I dribble the water on, and it's much tidier. That's all I had.
Well, good. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. We're just at 2 hours. Anyone have any questions or comments that you want to give?
Question.
Martin.
There were three separate uses of diamond stone by Mary May, by you, and by Terry. What grit diamond stone? There's 400, there's 600. What grit do you use? Anybody?
Anybody want to pick that one?
Well, the ones I use is I use the 220 for DMT. It's called their extra coarse 220 grit for like manual grinding.
Is that the diamond plate?
Yes.
The diamond plate.
Yeah, the diamond plate. This is this one here. Can you see that?
All right, I've got a 400. I was wondering.
Yeah, that's probably where I would. And then I've got a 325. So I've got a 220, a 325, a 600. That means when I use it. Then I go to the whetstones.
Terry, what about you?
You're muted.
Okay, so I used early on some water stones. I've never used, no, take that back. I have used a diamond stone in my traveling kit for a while, just because I could get a bead on it, a burr. But don't generally. I use an India stone if I'm gonna put a burr on a blade by hand, and that, goodness, I'm not sure what grit that is. It's rough as a cob. That's an oil stone though, and I think I've used that for about 20 years now too. It doesn't go away. and it doesn't deform very easily. It is a very hard stone, very hard. To get the burr off the back of the non-beveled side of a gouge or a V-tool, I use slip stones, but they're ceramic slip stones. So they're, you know, they're very, very hard too. And I use them very, very gently because I don't want to fracture the thing. So to answer your question, I really don't use diamond stones very often. I may give them a try again, but I tried that years ago, and I think they're sitting at the bottom of my spare stuff box right now. So.
Want to send it to me?
Yeah, I remember the colors. I've got a red one and a blue one and a gray one maybe. I'll look and see if I can find them. I'll send them to you. Yes, sir. I'll be more than happy to share. Yes, sir.
Good. Anybody else have anything?
My diamond stone, the extra fine, which is, I believe about 2000 is my last normal stone before stropping. I also have an extra fine, which I think is supposed to be 8,000, but I don't use that on just standard chisels and for carving.
Okay.
So I have the description in front of me, and the fine is 600 mesh, 25 micron. The extra fine is 1200 mesh, 9 micron. And the extra fine is 8,000 mesh. That being said, most of what I'm doing anymore, unless I'm completely reconstructing something that I bought used, I use the fine and extra fine simply because I know it will take longer, but I can focus on it more because I'm paranoid. So it works. It does the job. It just takes a little longer. It depends on how much risk you want to take. If I need to go grind it with the grinder-based power system, I'll do that, but I really haven't had to do that in a number of years. But I have the double-sided fine and extra fine, and I've managed to get some pieces of junk working really well with that. It takes a long time, like up to 10 minutes maybe, so I don't find that to be too laborious.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I think it's been a good session and appreciate your attendance. And we shall see you all next month. Don't forget to register for the picnic in August if you plan on coming. We'd appreciate you registering so we know how many people to count on. So have a good evening, everyone. Thanks again.